Peace, peace, and welcome. We're glad you're here. This is the Cook on Monday Morning podcast. I am here with the homie, Albrey Brown. Welcome, bro.
Hey, man. How you doing? Good morning.
Good morning.
It's early.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. yeah. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
Of course. At Cook on Monday Morning, we believe that if you own Monday morning, you can own the week. If you own the week, you can own the year. And if you change your year, you can change your life. So Albrey and I have like multiple cross-pollinizations of connections and, all the stuff he's been doing in tech around diversity. And I think his upbringing, how he got involved in tech in the city is really incredible. And I want to dig into that with you a little bit today, if that's cool.
For sure. Yeah.
Cool.
On the concept of Mondays, I've been calling them Money Mondays.
Okay.
Too.
Money Monday.
If you think about Monday as getting that money, then you can also own the week as well. So I love your concept too.
Right on.
Yeah, and folding that into that is like gotta think about getting up and getting that money on Mondays.
Okay, that's what's up. Well, so we met through the company that you started called Telegraph Academy.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about what that was, what you were doing with that, and I want to get into other parts of your story too, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. So Telegraph Academy was a coding boot camp specifically geared towards people of color. And the way it came about was about a year and a half earlier, I went to a coding boot camp called Hack Reactor. And it changed my life. Beforehand, and we'll get into this, but no college degree, didn't really know where I was going in life, a little bit aimless. And I saw an ad on Google that said, in 3 months, you can make $100K. Of course, I clicked on that ad.
Yeah.
And that led me to Hack Reactor. 3 months, 11 hours a day, 6 days a week, learning how to code, get you a job in the industry, start making six figures. So I went to that school, worked out, got a job as a software engineer. And then I worked at the school for about 6 months. And as I was going along, I was like telling my homies in the community, hey, did you know that coding boot camps exist? Did you know that you could learn how to code and make six figures? No one believed me. Nah, there's no way, until I started showing them my paychecks. They were like, oh, this is real.
Right.
So went to Sean Drost, shout out Sean, the co-founder at the time of Hack Reactor. And I said, hey, there's a market opportunity here. There are folks who really are grinders who can come in here, learn how to code. We can get them jobs. And I know the industry is very, very interested in diversity work right now. This was a year after Jesse Jackson came to the Valley and said, hey, y'all have to release your diversity numbers. The day that I started at Hack Reactor, Google dropped their first diversity numbers. So I could tell that this was going to be a trend, that the Valley was going to have to start seeing and really taking diversity work seriously. So I think those two concepts kind of were close together. Tech companies were looking at folks who are underrepresented. Our coding boot camp could make that happen in 3 months. How about we just start one for people of color? Thankfully, Sean, Tony, and Marcus, the co-founders, saw the vision. They invested in Bianca and I. My co-founder, Bianca Gandolfo, who's a software engineer. And in, June 2015, we launched Telegraph Academy, a fully running boot camp specifically geared towards people of color. And our first cohort was 15 people. And, just hit the ground running, teaching people how to code.
Right. Yeah. I met you around that time because I started running Mission Bit, and I think it was, I forget the year now. It was like late 2014. And so I met you, I think in late 2015, and I saw the site like was it on Telegraph Street? Yeah, Telegraph Academy. Yeah. And it was like this really incredible bustling space. And you were like, you were definitely in your element, It was hard to get a meeting with you.
Yeah.
Kind of like it was hard to get you to schedule on this podcast. You're like, you stay so busy. So you went from not going to college to starting a career coding school for people of color?
Yeah. So it was really wild, man. I mean, I didn't go to college for various reasons.
Yeah. Why not?
And now that I look back on it, as I get older, the reasons start to evolve as to why I didn't make the jump, or so to kind of like go all the way back. I was never a very good student. I never really saw the not the point of school, but I never really got a lot of fulfillment out of getting good grades or making teachers happy. But I was also super creative and wanted to do things outside of school. So in high school,
you grew up in this area too.
Yeah. So I grew up in Berkeley. Started elementary school at Craigmont in Berkeley, Craigmont Hills, up until 3rd grade, and then my mom was like, "Hey, I need to take you out of public school." I was getting in trouble all the time, mostly because I was bored. I was causing a lot of trouble for the teachers. She was up there every other week. And not because I wasn't doing well, but because I was spending extra time just messing around and also getting other kids to mess around with me. So she was like, "You need to go somewhere else."
Right.
So I ended up going to St. Paul's Episcopal School in Oakland, right by the lake, 4th grade to 8th grade. And at that time, it was really formative in the sense that I learned how to be in white spaces. Craigmont, I was the one of 2 black kids in my class. And coming from a school, or not Craigmont, St. Paul's, I was one of 2 from 4th to 8th grade. And coming from a school where it was a predominantly black school at Craigmont. So now I had to switch contexts. And super interesting experience. And that's when I started to start to fail. The school got harder. You know what I'm saying? It was a little bit more advanced concepts. Being a private school with smaller classes, there was a lot more scrutiny on what you needed to deliver and what teachers wanted from you. And the way that I responded to that was by acting out and building more social relationships with my classmates rather than learn how to be a good student.
Right.
Fast forward to high school, went to Berkeley High, which put me back into the context of being in a predominantly POC space. At the time, Berkeley High was about 55% people of color, Latinx, or underrepresented people of color. So Latinx and Black. And then the rest was, you could say like 30% white, and then about 15% Asian. And although it was, very diverse, it was also very segregated. If you walked the campus and saw the different pods that were together, much like a lot of high schools, the white kids with the white kids, the black kids with the black kids, the Latino kids with the Latino kids, and there wasn't a lot of mixture. But because I had come from a fairly white space, and I was also into athletics, I played basketball, I got to kick it with both of those folks. And I was somewhat of the liaison between those two groups. All that to say, I was always very social. But when it came to hitting the books, when it came to being disciplined enough for academia, it just never came to me. It wasn't something I was into. My mom never disciplined me in that way either. She was more focused on making sure that we had food on the table, and making sure that we had a house and home to be in. So when it came to college, it was a combination of things too. One, it was a lot of fear. I was very afraid that I wouldn't be able to do well and really fulfill the investment that college is supposed to be, right? That you do well and then you get a job that helps you pay back those loans. And then the second piece, which me and a guest, Ruben Harris, who you have before, will agree on, is that I actually did the math about like what college actually gets you, most people, when it comes to a degree. And I realized that we're at a point that what you pay for college and what you get back on average they don't really balance out. So I wasn't willing to take the risk to spend $150, $250, even $80,000 to take out a loan to go to college to get a 4-year degree, unless I knew I was going to be able to get a job that I could pay that back within 5 years. And I just didn't see it happening. So And the last reason was that my mom passed away. She had breast cancer my sophomore year. And she was like, hey, I just want to see you graduate. So my sophomore year, I started working my ass off to graduate. I barely made it. And then I had enough social standing to speak at graduation. So not only did I get to graduate, I also got to speak to my class about fear and about the next step and how you're always going to feel like a freshman at the end of the day. And that's what life is about. Always getting into situations where you feel like a freshman. Right. And I'm very, very grateful that my mom got to see that. And I think that is kind of what fueled me to do Telegraph Academy, just to give opportunities to folks who may have struggled coming up, but can still grind it out and do great things later in life. Yeah.
I actually didn't know about your mother passing. What year, how old were you when that happened?
So I was 18. Okay. Yeah, that was 2009.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Telegraph Academy was 2015.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think the piece about the college, the finances connected to college, like is it worth the investment? I think a lot of that is very important to dig in on. And I don't want to spend a ton of time on it, but there are, I met a lot of high school students throughout my career. And when I meet seniors that have very clear ideas of why they're avoiding college, like, they've thought it through and they're deeply connected to a particular interest, I always support their direction. It's like, okay, you seem bought in. Yeah. Like you have to convince your parents, you have to like do all this, like you are committed. So have at it.
Yeah.
One of the big things that college gives to people is like this social connection, but you are already incredibly social. And so you had a lot of, I think, attributes that were going to serve you well, no matter where you showed up in the world, and I think it has for all the things that you've gotten involved in and built. So I think it takes courage. I think for this generation, for like when we came up, to not go to college, if that was the expectation of the community, it was like that was you were going against the grain,
Yeah, and not to cut you off, but there were all of my family members did not support me. And I understand now why. Right. As I get older, I think by decision making, and if I went back, I may have made a different decision. Only because I would have been more clear about the reasons why I wasn't going. But my family members, especially being a Black man, were like, there's no way you're going to make it. There's no way you're going to be able to do anything. And they saw it as kind of like a death knell in my career. And, being the stubborn Aries,
you're Aries too?
Aries dude that I am.
Yeah, when's your birthday?
March 30th.
Okay, I'm April 16th.
Okay, for sure. Aries gonna go here.
Big up the Aries.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
When we see something, we're like, hey, I'm going to go for that. And no one can tell me otherwise. Right. And whether I was going to be right or wrong, I was going to go for it. But I remember sitting across from my cousin when I wanted to go to Hack Reactor. And I didn't have the money for Hack Reactor. And I was sitting across from my cousin. He's 10 years older than me, always been a mentor to me. And he was like, I asked him, he's a lawyer, has lots of disposable income. And I asked him, I was like, hey, can you give me that, like put $1,000 towards my campaign to do this? And he was like, no. He was like, no, this is not something that I believe in. And this is not something that I see the vision for. And at the time, of course, I was pissed off. Right. But I understand now. Like if you don't see the vision for something, you shouldn't invest. But to your point about the community and the expectations that are put on you, I think that it's doubly for folks like us to go to higher education and to use it as a way to maneuver into a new class. And it scared the shit out of my family that I was choosing a different way. I want to kind of be like, look at me now at Thanksgiving. But, I also need to stay humble because they've helped me since then through the journey.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you only child?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you started Telegraph Academy. You went to Hack Reactor, started Telegraph Academy, and you transitioned to do a lot of other things. And there were some things that you definitely wanted to get into as well. But like, talk a little bit about what your journey looked like after Telegraph.
Yeah. So I just got to give a special thanks to the Hack Reactor co-founders just one more time, and my co-founder as well, because one of the challenges with Telegraph Academy that I wish we had seen from the beginning was that $18,000 is a lot of money. Yeah. And we had a financing partner lined up that would basically pay your tuition if you got into the school. And then afterwards, you would pay it back at no interest, just straight up. And that was the key to making our product work for people. Working with underrepresented communities, generally, the amount of disposable income is a lot lower than the folks that Hack Reactor were serving. But we didn't look for backup financing. So in 2016, the lender that we were working with got bought by a firm. And a firm said, we can't do that anymore. So that really put torpedo in our entire business model. And made it so either we had to open up a school that didn't serve Black and brown folks, or Hack Reactor would buy us back and integrate us into their programming. So we opted for the latter. And Hack Reactor saw this vision. We got into a room and I said, hey, if you acqui-hire all of our staff, et cetera, we can use this as an opportunity to make Hack Reactor the most diverse coding bootcamp. Diversity is still a very big conversation. It will, especially women are joining the workforce and wanting to join STEM in ways that are really important. And I think highlighting this message is going to be huge for the business and for the culture in general. So make me your director of diversity and inclusion. So they did. They brought back everyone into the Hack Reactor fold. And they said, hey, let's start working on actual corporate diversity work. That was the first time I had ever been a diversity and inclusion person, I would say. Before then, it was more entrepreneurial. I was teaching at Telegraph Academy, and I was doing more of the business side, sales, and all the operations. So it was an interesting transition to go from that to building culture and figuring out how to fold culture into this professional space that was also a school.
Yeah. Well, talk about talk a little bit more about the bounce back, because when you are trying to build something and then it has to change, that can't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And then you're trying to find solutions, and it sounds like you did, but to say a little bit more about like what you were thinking, experiencing when that initial news came that you had to either change the model. Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah. So in May of 2016, that's when we got the news that our lender wasn't going to be doing its thing anymore. And we lost out on a lot of money. And the first thing I had to do as a founder was make some cuts. And as a 24-year-old,
I didn't realize you were that young.
When I met you. As a 24-year-old, telling people that they don't have a job anymore changes you. And that's when I kind of realized that all great things come to an end. And usually a lot more quickly than you would think. I mean, if you look at the Warriors, right? Things come to an end way more quickly than you want them to at the end of the day. And it took me about a month from May to June to come to grips with the terms that, Telegraph Academy isn't going to be the same thing or the dream that we thought it was going to be. So after a month of just going through somewhat of a tumultuous time, students wanting refunds, staff being pissed off because we had to either let them go or cut their pay by 30%. It was really an exercise in empathy. It was an exercise in empathy and patience. And, me and the folks who stuck around, my co-founder left as well, decided that no matter what, we were going to figure out a way to keep the name and the spirit of Telegraph alive. So we went to the Kapor Center and said, hey, can we pitch so that you can buy us? And we went to some other like smaller investors and said, hey, we just need 500K. Can you make it happen? Unfortunately, as we learned, the VC cycle takes a long time. It takes a long time, a lot of pitching. We didn't have that much time. So, during these conversations, we were very much in line with Tony, Sean, and Marcus about what we wanted to do. And, the ultimate decision of going back to Hack Reactor and integrating just made the most sense for everybody involved. The speed by which we could do it, it was somewhat seamless in the sense that we were already connected to that network. And it worked for Hack Reactor, which I think, in those moments when you have to change, try to look for win-win-win situations, rather than situations where only you win. You know what I'm saying? Because there is a world where we get bought by another organization and try again, where Hack Reactor loses. There's a situation where we sell it off and we get paid out, where we win, but the students lose, right? So I think what I was looking for was a win-win-win situation. And it was hard to see that through all the options. And then that was kind of an exercise in faith that something is going to come up that works for everybody, that leads to the next thing. So I don't know, was that kind of?
Yeah. I think it's important to talk through that. And, like I've experienced in defeats and letdowns, like losing elections or having to make cuts to people, or like, big transitions in life. And it's easy to talk about the W's, but to kind of get into what it was like to go through the L's, I think is really helpful for people.
Yeah.
So you got training as a software engineer, and it launched a career ultimately into trying to improve and diversify culture at companies.
Yeah.
And so that take you in a lot of different directions, right? Like in terms of like the companies that you worked for. It was like, what does that journey look like, trying to work on diversity within the tech community? Yeah.
So, as being a director of diversity at Hack Reactor gave me opportunity to really learn, and understand how diversity work can both be integrated into a culture and how it can help impact the bottom line of an organization. I think both those two things are very important when you are building anything within an organization. How does this allow people to work here more freely and fluidly? And then how does that translate into more money and more impact for the organization at large? And so I was at Hack Reactor for about 16 months, started the Telegraph track, which you could see as our internal employee resource group. Essentially, we took students who identified as underrepresented and we put them through a leadership development track. We connected them with folks in the industry who already had jobs and were thriving in their career, and they would get mentorship. We would have speakers come in and talk about what it's like to look for jobs and different strategies that they can use, things that were really focused on preparing them for the job search before the job search. The way I think about diversity work is there's a lot of networking you can do. There's a lot of, happy hours and learning about culture and experiences. But the number one thing that I like to provide underrepresented folks is access to knowledge that will increase and increase the velocity of their careers. I think I measure my impact by how much money I'm making other people who are underrepresented, whether that be through referral networks, whether that be through how many people did we get raises, how many people did we get jobs. That's how I measure my impact, and that's how I build my programs. So fast forward to 2017. I was really happy at Hack Reactor, but I was looking to learn how to do this work at scale. Hack Reactor is about 250 people. I was looking for a company that was either the Facebook level or the 4,000, 3,000 people. So, and that was really for two
what drew you to that? Oh, it sounds like you're going to get into it. That was
question.
My next question.
The first piece was I wanted to increase the number of people that I was impacting at the end of the day. And Hack Reactor was not going to grow to a 3,000 or 4,000 person company. And then second, I think, I will always have an entrepreneurial spirit. And I know that at some point I'm going to go back and try to build a business. So I'd already seen, how to build a company from, the 80 that Hack Reactor was to the 250. And I wanted to see how an organization of 4,000 or even larger operated. So I could have both of those experiences. So I applied to Pivotal Labs, or Pivotal at the time, that just got acquired by VMware. And that was I got an interview, ended up starting in May. I was their first diversity and inclusion program manager, working under their director of diversity. This was also the first job where I ever had a boss. So it was an interesting transition. But I read this book and I read this quote that really guided my experience that said, to become a great leader, you have to be a great follower so that you can recognize great followers and great employees. So I took it as an opportunity to be the best employee I could be and to really own both my experience and manage up as much as I could, make my boss's life a lot easier, no matter what, whether we had disagreements, whether we, I felt in my Aries mind that like my idea was better. My job was to make her life easier and to impact the company. Pivotal was amazing. Pivotal was amazing. What
does Pivotal do?
Pivotal did run essentially it was a two-part business. So they had a consulting arm that helped companies move from waterfall development. So that's basically like a top-down directors making the decision on what we're supposed to build over 18 months, and then engineers building that over 18 months to Agile, which is more of a bottoms-up approach where engineers are working on things that are self-directed, and then they bubble up concerns and challenges to directors who then make strategic decisions on a 6-week basis. So it's really the way that most small software companies work right now, which is instead of embarking on these 18-month projects and then seeing them fail because you either missed the market or you weren't really paying attention, you start working in 6-week sprints so that you can be more nimble in what you're building if something changes or a feature doesn't work. And then you can continuously get feedback about how things are going. So they consulted companies on moving from waterfall to Agile. And then they also had an application that allowed you to kind of like accelerate your learning when you're moving from a waterfall to Agile culture. It was called Pivotal Tracker. So that's what they did. That was their bread and butter. On the diversity and inclusion side, we had a lot of things going on, but what I owned was employee resource groups. And I see employee resource groups as the people are going to, tech companies are going to hate me for saying this, but the closest thing to a union that you have in tech. It's really interesting to me that tech hasn't had unions just yet. And it's going to be very interesting of whoever leads that charge because it will happen.
So tech companies should unionize?
I don't know I don't have enough information as to whether tech companies should unionize.
You would say that they're going in that direction?
I think that once software engineers, the need for software engineers gets saturated, software engineers will be the ones who start to unionize. Once wages go below a certain point, software engineers.
So like worker protections, like do they need, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, well, I guess, we'll see.
Yeah, we shall see. And again, I'm not an expert in unionizing. The parallel that I would like, that I like to make is that these are groups, done right, an employee resource group can be a continuous feedback loop for both leadership and employees, as well as a space for underrepresented folks to accelerate their careers. Yeah. And that's the approach we took to our ERGs at Pivotal. Yeah.
This is my perception of diversity in tech, since we want to get into like so my perception is that all the diversity at a tech company is in the diversity and inclusion office. Like they'll hire somebody of color to run diversity and inclusion. and then so they can say, we're working on diversity and inclusion. Look, we hired a person of color.
Yeah.
But then it's not actually moving in any real way within the companies as a result of that hire.
Yeah. Well,
what's your opinion
I'd be
on my
interested.
assessment?
Yeah, I'd be as a. I think that's a fair critique. I think that's a very fair critique. I think that it's going to be different in different places. As someone who works on diversity and inclusion work and works with leaders to kind of understand what they believe diversity and inclusion work to be, I think that the reality is that tech is a very white and Asian dominated space. That's the reality. So no matter where you go, you're going to see that as the very majority population. And the majority of D&I folks are of a different demographic.
Yeah.
Or mostly Black or Latinx, or there's a lot of white women in the space. You know what I'm saying? So I think the perception is reality at the end of the day. And the reason why my job exists is to figure out how to create a reality where you can walk into a room or you can walk into a tech company and not see the work as window dressing. And we haven't gotten there yet by any means.
Which company would you say is the best at it? Or which companies stand out?
I think there are two. There's Lyft. Okay. Lyft is 20% POC.
Okay.
And
so I should stop using Uber.
Well, I mean, sometimes those Lyft prices, man. But if you want to support more Black and brown folks and their stock, then yes.
Because I think that's part of the issue is that whoever is using the company doesn't care about that diversity numbers, or it's not like I still have Gmail. Yeah, you know, like I don't really know an alternative. Like we all say Google, I still have my iPhone. Yeah, you know, and those companies are terrible at diversity hiring. Yeah, you can say I'm wrong if they actually are good at it.
No, that's real. I mean, Google also, I would say, is climbing and this is not an excuse for them, but they're climbing they started out as purely a white and Asian company or an Indian company, right? At least from a demographic standpoint. So they are starting from a point where it's very difficult to change both the culture and the demographics that they have. That said, I would never tell anyone not to use an application because of their diversity numbers. I think that somewhat defeats the point. I think that we're never going to get a critical mass, especially for something like Google, that if enough users stop using it because of diversity work, then they will have to invest X, Y, and Z money to make it happen. Yeah. I think we're all way too dependent on tech for that to be a reasonable ask. And it would also affect Black and brown folks in a negative way. If you couldn't choose between Uber and Lyft because of their diversity numbers, maybe you're losing money every time you use a Lyft because their prices are higher. If you couldn't use Gmail because of their diversity numbers, it might adversely affect the whatever connections you're making or whatever network you're building, because Google just happens to be in my opinion, the best product for email and other things.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly really believe in hiring around competence. Like competence is really important to me. Diversity is really important to me. When I ran Mission Bid, I never really had a problem finding people of color, but I was like running a nonprofit, you know? And when I think about a company like Google's ability to really touch the planet with its work, it's best positioned to do something real around workforce, given how extensive and how much money they have. Yeah. You know, I would say that they should be leading the charge in a rare way. And they try to get involved in all these philanthropic things, you know, so I don't know. I think that if it's going to happen, it should be happening at a company like Google or Apple. Yeah, like they're well equipped to bring people in.
100%.
And it's not. Yet it's not.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think that there's a difference in my mind between like what we want to see and what is actually happening, in the sense that Google's and Apple's diversity numbers are going up and up every single year. For the past 5 years, they've gone up by some percentage point. So if we're talking about progress, Google and Apple are making progress year over year, and a lot of companies can't really say that. if we're talking about being in the community, I would say Google and Apple, at least Google is in the community. Google is sponsoring. I've seen Google's name on, I'd say, let's say 35 to 40% of things that are diversity and inclusion related that are pretty huge. We're talking about like conferences. You're talking about philanthropic efforts, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So I totally understand where you're coming from. I also would like to point out that like this movement has been, is only really 5 years old. So to expect an industry to totally flip overnight is a tall task. And flip overnight when they don't have any experts who know what they're doing to make those changes. And, even diversity and inclusion folks, the number of diversity and inclusion folks has grown 10x over the last 3 years. And what that says to me, what that signals to me is that D&I in tech is still a very, very, very young industry. And we're not going to see that change until we actually until we build that expertise and we build and fail a lot so that we can understand where we need to go next. If you think about the journey of all the companies that are super successful right now, it really took them 10 years to find a product market fit and to become the companies, the Salesforces, the Googles, the Facebooks of the world. So I think if we think about diversity work in that same way, we still have like 3, maybe 5 years until we really crack the code on what does it mean to be a diverse company? What does it mean to invest in underrepresented spaces? And again, I'm not trying to make an excuse for the companies. They should have done it a long time ago. Jesse Jackson was in those stakeholder meetings for these organizations since 2011. At the same time, I think that not only is it on the companies, but it's also on diversity and inclusion practitioners as the folks that get paid to do this work to move the ball along and to learn and to really lead their companies in the charge. Yeah. Well, you're definitely involved and committed to seeing the change happen. There was something you wanted to get into before we had the interview, and I wanted to make sure we touched on it. Is that like too rough of a transition? Or? No, yeah, let's go. For sure. So what was it? What you wanted to get into? Yeah, so... What'd you call it? It was... it's called... So look, I'll set it up real quick in the sense that, during my time at Pivotal, actually through many parts of my career, I've kind of picked up a mantra. And the way it came about was, and the way I first heard it was my, I was in community college for about half a semester when I thought that maybe I could go to college after high school. And my homie Anwar, we were in a class together, and one day he had overdraft fees at the bank. And he was about to pay them. And one of our white homies named Daniel, he stopped him and he was like, don't pay those. Overdraft fees don't exist. They're just trying to get money from you. Like, call them and tell them you're going to switch banks. Anwar was like, I didn't know. Kind of like that Dave Chappelle. I didn't know I couldn't do that. Right. So Anwar calls the bank and is on the phone, and he's kind of stuttering, and Daniel just takes the phone from him, and he's like, I'm not paying these overdraft fees. I'm going to a different bank unless you both cancel them and give me overdraft protection for free so that this never happens to me again. The guy's like, the dude over the phone is like, well, is there anything else we can do? Yada, yada, yada. He's like, no, I'm going to a different bank. I'm taking my money out and I need it unless you do this for me. And me and Anwar are just sitting there like, wow. First of all, I'd never seen Daniel like this unless it's over some money, I guess. And then the dude switches it up, and he gives the phone back, and he goes, "What would a white man do?" Just keep that in your head when you think about someone taking advantage of you or something that you feel like an injustice or something that you feel like you want. Think, what would a white man do? And ever since then, I've been thinking about that, and I've used that mantra in many different pivotal moments in my life, and it's always worked out. What would a white man do? And I told this, I was invited to Slack during Afrotech to do a talk, And my talk was named "What Would a White Man Do?" And it went through 3 moments that in my life in which I could have, I was feeling unsure about where things were going or what I should do. And I thought to myself, what would a white man do? And I chose that. And it got me to a higher point in my career or in my life. So all that to say, I think that, the next step for me is to develop this concept into something a little bit bigger and a little bit more concise, which is what would a white man do? Kind of a series on navigating your career, your professional career, with the confidence of an average white guy. And how can you think to yourself in moments where you're maybe unsure about where to go? How do I develop this confidence that has been bestowed upon, and I'm making generalizations here, but white men as they come up, that you can do anything, you deserve everything, know your worth, seek your worth, don't take no for an answer. Right. All of these different things that I've seen white men navigate with such ease. How can we navigate in that same way? And will it be beneficial to your career moving forward?
Right. Yeah. And so is it rooted in like self-advocacy? Is that like and being willing to stand up to institutions or ask for more? Like, is that sort of what the general concept is about? Or
exactly?
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think it is interesting with there was a book that was written, I forget the name of the guy, but it was called like White Men Shouldn't Have All the Fun. And it was about this millionaire from Baltimore, and he talked about all his business ventures and sort of how he navigated through that world.
Yeah.
And there's a mindset around like how to negotiate your salary, or how to talk to a company when they're trying to give you a fee that you don't want.
Yeah.
Or how to talk to your local government or your state or your federal government, like, making demands based on knowing like what you deserve and what it should look like. And all of that is, I think it changes everything. The ability to tap into that changes everything. Am I in the right direction of how you're thinking about the concept? Or
exactly?
Okay,
exactly.
And so, how was it received at Afrotech?
It was received very well.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. I was on stage with Hannibal Buress.
During that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the comedian.
Yes,
and he ruined Bill Cosby's career.
I won't exactly. And Bill Cosby tried to come for him afterwards too. But I won't say that more people were coming up to me afterwards, but it resonated. And I still get people hitting me up on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, like that concept, I used that in my last job search, and it made it a lot easier to apply for that job that I didn't think I was qualified for, or to advocate for myself in a meeting when I didn't think things were going my way." So I think it's a powerful, powerful concept. And I definitely want to check out the book that you just spoke about, because I feel like it would be informative in that way. And then the second piece to that I talked about at Afrotech was get you a white mentor. I feel like it's definitely important to have mentors of color. It's definitely important to have mentors who are women. I think that sometimes as underrepresented folks, we believe that if we invest time in building relationships and strong relationships with folks who are white men, that we're kind of hustling backwards. And I believe that that is you're putting yourself at a disadvantage if you don't have a white male mind to pick their brain and figure out what would you do in that situation. And most recently, it's helped me in the sense that after that talk, one of a lawyer at Slack said, "Hey, I went to Berkeley High. We should get lunch." And I was like, "For sure." He's like, "I really liked your talk. I'm a white man, so I think it resonated." Wasn't that clear when you said that?
It's like white people would be like, "Listen, I'm white." So.
Yes. I was like, really? Okay. I was thinking Sicilian. I didn't know. So, and
is that how the bill started? So like, so listen, I'm a white man.
Yes. Like, well, thank you for letting me know.
Yeah. All of our, because I do have white friends that watch the show. If you were talking to a person of color, you don't have to remind them or explain that you're white. Like we see.
We know.
We see you.
We can see.
We see.
Yeah. Just like we're not going to be like, so I'm a black dude. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, he's like, I'm a white man, things like that. And we start talking. I'm like, hey, I'm interviewing at this company. He was like, I just met with the founder of that company. Mm-hmm. Can I send them a reference? And I was like, yes, but before so, let me ask you some advice. How did you know that this company, Slack, and other companies were going to blow up the way that they did? And he gave me some advice. He was like, look, it's not something that you can know. It's something that you feel. Every time you talk about it, someone knows about this company. And we had a really real conversation. And I was genuinely just trying to understand his mindset of how he chooses these things. I was working at DocuSign at the time. Mm-hmm. DocuSign is an incredible company. It is blowing up.
Yeah, I use it.
Okay, nice.
Your finger on the screen.
It's easy.
I'm doing a finger motion for the people that are listening, but go ahead.
And it's amazing. And it's blowing up. And it's a good opportunity. And I didn't want to leave a good opportunity for something that wasn't going to be amazing. But I leaned on the expertise of my white homie. Mm-hmm. And I think he gave me some advice of a lifetime. Mm-hmm. He was like, I would burn many bridges to go to the company that you want to go to. Mm-hmm. And I made the jump. And I think that's just the power of proactively building networks with white men, because at the end of the day, the second book that I want to write, or concept, is what should a white man do? And that's really pushing white men to become allies. Mm-hmm. But we also got to meet them, and we got to demand it from them. And I think that obviously this dude liked how I moved, but I took the opportunity to demand something from him, which was advice and also an endorsement. And it worked out.
Yeah.
So, what do white men do?
Yeah. Well, we have to wrap up our discussion, but I did want to. I've always appreciated how well you take care of yourself. And I think you have like a background as a personal trainer, right? Is that right?
Yeah,
I knew that. Look at that. So talk a little bit about like are you still keeping up with your fitness routine and everything like that? Like give us some like broad strokes for 2020, how to be in shape like Albreys.
Thank you. So I was a personal trainer before I got into tech. I started lifting because I got beat up in my senior year. I got jumped, and I was like, that's never happening again. So I immediately got a YMCA membership and started lifting, and then formalized it by learning about health and stuff like that, and then wanted to make some money doing personal training. Broad 2020 goals, I think, is I've stopped thinking about working out in goals, in the sense that I feel like goals are, different segmented destinations that you want to get to. And I started to think it more of a journey, which means 1% more every day. If you can do one exercise a day, leave it at that. I feel like I've gotten to the point where it's less about how I look and more about how working out is more in service to my mental and to my mind, and the endorphins I get from it, the discipline I get from it, the pushing myself past the point of being tired allows me to do everything else in my life in that same way. And it reminds me that if I can work out, if I can put my body in pain and get my mind through that, I can send 100 emails in a day. I can finish this campaign. I can get through this one-on-one. And then what comes out of that is being fit.
Right.
So I've started to think less about the destination of getting to 175 pounds of pure muscle or getting an 8-pack or whatever, and started to think, how does working out service the rest of my life? And I think using that mentality takes a lot of the fear away from it. And it also forces you to think about it in a way where it doesn't have to be regimented. If you don't have a gym, do 100 push-ups. If you can't do 100 push-ups, do 10 push-ups, and do it not because you want to be fit, but because it's in service to the other things that you do in your life. And then the last thing that I've been doing, I think that has been a revelation for me the last 2 years, I've been very, very, very committed to meditation. Meditation has been a huge part of my life. At least 5 minutes a day, if not 20 minutes a day, getting up in the morning, breathing, and just following my breath for 20 minutes. And I've always felt like I have never been diagnosed, but ADD, or it's hard for me to focus on things because I have so many thoughts coming through my mind. And meditation has quieted those down and allowed me to get very deep into a couple of things rather than having my mind in a bunch of different places at the same time. So not only do I advocate now for physical health, but mental health insofar as meditating is really important to me as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, Albert.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Good to have you.
Thank you for having me on the show, man.
Yeah, bro. That was great. Peace. And thank you for tuning in to another episode of Cook on Monday Morning. It was really great to see Albrey again, to learn more about his story, to hear about his experience trying to build a company, having to dissolve a company, and then continuing what he thought his purpose was, which is to help diversify larger tech companies as he's going throughout his career and journey. I think that, it's always important to elevate and highlight people that are like going for something. And that's what we really want to do at Cook on Monday Morning. Thank you all for supporting the podcast and for subscribing and sharing it with your friends. I'm getting a lot of great feedback. We're seeing the number of subscriptions grow. We are on a journey to get to 2,020 subscribers by April 30th of 2020. And so, I think this whole thing is about building a community and trying to connect with people and give people access to others that are doing important things. At Cook on Monday Morning, we believe that if you own Monday morning, you can own the week. If you own the week, you can own the year. If you change your year, you can change your life. Reach out to me at stevoncook.com if you want to learn more about past episodes, or you want to contact me directly. You can email me at info@stevoncook.com. I do run a consulting practice called the Luther Harris Holding Company. We offer strategic advising support for businesses that are looking to grow. If you're interested in learning more about that, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. And, you can reach out to me on Twitter at Stevon Cook. If there are certain types of guests or certain topics you want me to bring up, please let me know. I'd like to thank the people that make this podcast possible. I'd like to thank my producer and videographer, David Dopete. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you. I'd like to thank Fernando Encico Marquez for all the editing that he does of the newsletter. I'd like to thank Icy House for providing the mics for the newsletter. Icy House, we appreciate you. Also want to end this episode by just saying thank you to the people of San Francisco, all the people in San Francisco that help our city run, from our muni drivers to our first responders, everyone that helps clean our streets, that keeps our streets safe, to our teachers, our school lunch workers. Thank you. I'm your biggest fan. This podcast is for you, and it's for everyone across the country in cities like LA, Houston, New Orleans, Atlanta, Miami, North Carolina, the state of North Carolina, New York, Chicago, Detroit. Anyone that's looking to change and improve their community, this show is also for you. I hope that we can find a way to connect. I hope to learn more about what you're doing and how you're changing your Monday morning. Thank you. Peace, and we out.